Hello, this is Brianne Pernick, and we are now going to work on Chapter 0, Lesson 3 for Math 0900. In this section, we are going to cover multiplying fractions, whole numbers, and mixed numbers, as well as dividing fractions, whole numbers, and mixed numbers. So our terms to know here are complex fraction as well as the term reciprocal, which is not in your textbook. So please make sure that you understand what this term is, because it's a very important term in algebra and beyond, and it's not in your text. So I want you to make sure that you understand what this term is. So one of the main things that I want you to know before we start talking about multiplying fractions is that your very first step should always be to check to see if anything is going to cross cancel. And what this means is that you're going to look along the diagonal of your two fractions to see if any factors can be divided out or canceled out of the fractions. Cross-canceling should be, like I said, the first thing that you check for, and it should become second nature to you whenever you are working with the multiplication of fractions, because it will make your numbers smaller. And it will be a reoccurring theme with me that smaller numbers are easier to work with, and they will save you time reducing at the end of the problem. Smaller numbers are not just easier to work with, but smaller numbers leave less room for error because they are easier to work with. So please get in the habit of checking to see if things are going to cross cancel. So let's look at example A. Now, the first thing that you're going to do is look along the diagonals of your problems. So when you look along the diagonal, and we're looking at the 3 and the 7, is there anything that can be divided out of both 3 and 7? And the answer there is no. So since there's nothing that can be divided out of 3 and 7, we leave them as is, and now we're going to look at the 5s. Okay, now on the 5s, when you look on that diagonal, obviously we can divide 5 into 5. So when we do 5 divided by 5, they each turn into a 1. So because they are now 1s instead of 5s, your multiplication of fractions becomes much easier. Now, the one rule that you have to follow for multiplication is that you are going to straight multiply. And what that means is that you multiply straight across your numerators and straight across your denominators. So we're going to do 3 times 1 is 3, and 1 times 7 is 7, and our answer is 3/7. Now, had we not cross-canceled, you would have straight multiplied and gotten 3 times 5 is 15, and 5 times 7 is 35. You would have then had to reduce that fraction by dividing out a factor of 5 in both the numerator and the denominator in order to get that 3/7. So cross-multiplying will cross-canceling will make your life easier in the end. Now, in a problem like letter A, this concept here was not difficult to do that multiplication and figure out what factor needed to be divided out or canceled out in order to reduce the fraction. But as your numbers get bigger and more complex, it's not going to be that easy. So cross canceling is really truly going to be like a best friend to you. Okay, let's move on to letter B. In letter B, let's check for cross canceling. Is there anything that we can cancel out of both 5 and 7 when we look on that diagonal? And the answer there is no. How about the 2 and the 11? And the answer there is also no. Since we cannot cross cancel, we're just going to straight multiply. So 2 times 7 is 14, and 5 times 11 is 55. Now the last step there is to check to see if anything can be reduced out, and nothing can. Now a little trick for you was if you checked for that cross canceling and you found that nothing could cancel out and you did that correctly, then nothing should reduce at the end. And if you cross canceled entirely at the beginning, you shouldn't have to reduce at the end. So it's just a little trick there. Okay, let's take a look at letter C. Now in letter C, when we look on our diagonals, and let's start with 8 and 10, there is canceling that can be done here because we can divide out a 2 from both 8 and 10. So if I do 8 divide by 2, that 8 will become a 4. And if I do 10 divide by 2, it will become a 5. So I'm allowing that 2 to cancel out to reduce my numbers. Now on the next diagonal, there is also a number that they have in common, a factor that they have in common. I can divide out a factor of 3 from both of them. So 15 divided by 3 leaves me with 5, and 27 divided by 3 leaves me with 9. Now that I have taken care of that cross canceling, I am now ready to straight multiply. So 5 times 5 makes 25, and 4 times 9 makes 36. There is nothing further that can reduce out of 25 and 36 in order to simplify that fraction. So it is now complete. Now, if you forgot to cross cancel, which is okay, it's not mandatory that you do that, you would have gotten 150 over 216 when you straight multiplied those fractions. So as you can see, those are big numbers. Nobody likes big numbers. And it's not as easy to cancel or to find a number that will cancel out of 150 and 216. So it's just nice to use cross-canceling when the numbers are nice and small like they are over here. So I don't know. What do you think? You can let me know your thoughts on that. Okay. So now we're going to talk about multiplying a fraction by a whole number. Now, before we start this, I need you to remember that every single whole number can be written as a fraction. What do I mean by this? I mean that if I have the number 2, it can be written as 2 over 1. If I have the number 5, it can be written as 5 over 1. If we have the number a, it can be written as a over 1. Okay? Every single whole number can be written as a fraction if we write it as that number over 1. So when we are multiplying a fraction by a whole number, we can write that whole number as a number over 1. And now we have two fractions, just like we've been working with. So we have 3/8 times 3 over 1. Look for some cross canceling. There is none. So we can straight multiply. So we'll do 3 times 3 makes 9, and 8 times 1 makes 8. We have 9/8. This is an improper fraction. We should not leave it that way. So we'll set up our little division problem. 8 goes into 9 one time, and we have a remainder of 1, so that makes 1 and 1/8. So our answer is 1 and 1/8. And there we go. Okay, now the next step that we have here is the multiplication of mixed numbers. Now, if you remember back to chapter 0, lesson 1, when we started talking about the conversion of improper fractions and mixed numbers, I told you that you had to learn how to do this for multiplication and division of fractions, okay? Mixed numbers must be converted to improper fractions before they can be multiplied. No if, ands, or buts. You absolutely cannot multiply a fraction if it is in the form of a mixed number. It cannot be computed. You have to make it into the form of an improper fraction. So let's take a look at letter A. We're being asked to find the area of a rectangle that is 2 1/3 meters long and 1 1/14 meters wide. We should know that area of a rectangle is found by multiplying length times width. So we're being asked to do 2 1/3 times 1 1/14. We have two mixed numbers. We cannot multiply mixed numbers, so we have to convert them into improper fractions. So we're going to start by multiplying the denominator in the whole number and adding the result to the numerator. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 gives us 7/3. Times, follow the same steps. We're going to multiply and then add. 14 times 1 is 14, plus 1 gives us 15/14. Now remember, we want to see if we can cross cancel. So we're going to check on our diagonals. 3 and 15 will cross cancel quite nicely. 3 will go into both of them. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. When we look on the next diagonal, we can cross cancel here as well with 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 14 divided by 7 is 2. Straight multiply now. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. And we're left with 5/2, which is an improper fraction. So now we convert back to a mixed number. 2 will go into 5 2 times, with a remainder of 1, so it is 2 1/2 meters squared. And we'll just put the square sign up there. Always label your answer for word problems. If you don't label, you will miss points. Okay? And the last problem here is just another example where you're being asked to convert. So we're going to do 15 plus 1 is 16/3 times 6/2 plus 7. We can cross cancel, and that's going to give us a 1 and a 2. This will give us a 1 and an 8. And then you're just going to straight multiply. Don't forget that that 7 is a 7/1. I'm going to stop this recording and we will pick up in